Okay, let's just make one thing clear. The point of this video is not to explain how to remotely connect to your own computer so that you can use it from another location. It's also not a tutorial on how to hack into other people's computers. This video is simply an exploration of a very interesting philosophical question. Is ignorance really bliss? I am going to tell you about a situation that happened to me recently, and then we talk about why sometimes pretending not to know something can actually be better for us, even when we do know what's going on. So this happened to me like a week or two ago. I was working on my laptop at my desk, and I had a remote desktop connection open to my desktop computer in another room, and I wasn't using the remote desktop connection to control anything. I had it up just so I could see the desktop of my home computer, so I could keep an eye on something that was downloading. Basically, I was doing nothing with the remote connection. I just had it open on my laptop screen. And then all of a sudden, this little pop-up window came up and it said, "You have been disconnected because another connection was made to the remote computer." Okay, I thought, well, that's annoying, but it's no big deal. It probably just means that someone else in my house accidentally connected to my computer without realizing it. But then, a few minutes later, I got this exact same notification again. And then it kept happening over and over again, like every couple of minutes. At first, I just ignored it, but then I got curious. What was causing this? Who was connecting to my computer? Was it the router? Was it the internet? Well, there was only one way to find out, so I closed all my programs and I went to investigate. Here's what I found. As you can see here, I am still connected to my computer. I can still see the desktop of my computer, but I cannot interact with it. I cannot click anything or type anything. I cannot do anything. It's like I've been locked out of my own computer. Even worse, this doesn't even seem to be one of those situations where I can just press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to bring up the task manager and try to close the program that's running on my computer. Why? Because I can't even get the keyboard focus to come back to this window. Like I can click on it, but nothing I type shows up. Nothing I press seems to do anything. Now, if you've ever used remote desktop before, you might already know what's going on here. When you have a remote connection to another computer, that means that you are interacting with the graphical user interface of that other computer. That other computer has a screen, it has windows, it has icons, it has a mouse cursor. But if you don't actually see any of that stuff, if you don't see the actual graphical user interface of that other computer, then you can't do anything. There's no way for you to interact with that computer. You have no idea what's going on. So basically, I had unknowingly opened up a remote desktop connection to my own computer. But who did this, and how did they do it? Well, here's the thing. I knew perfectly well that I had opened up a remote desktop connection to my own computer. I know I did it. I remember doing it. But somehow in the back of my mind, deep down inside, there was some part of me that refused to believe that I had done what I knew I had done. Does that make sense? It was like I knew I did it, But at the same time, I felt completely confused and disoriented, as if I had no idea what was happening. For example, when I looked at the taskbar on my computer, I could see that the Windows menu and the search bar were grayed out. I couldn't click them, and I knew that this was because I was using remote desktop, but I didn't want to believe it. I think deep down I was hoping that if I ignored the problem long enough, eventually things would go back to normal. But obviously, they never did. Eventually, I figured it out, and I was able to reconnect to my computer and everything went back to normal. But now let us set aside the fact that this happened to me, and let us talk more generally about this whole idea of pretending not to know something when we do know it. Like I said, I knew that I had opened a remote desktop connection to my computer, but deep down inside, I refused to believe it. I was basically trying to convince myself that I didn't know what I knew. Does that sound ridiculous? I mean, obviously it sounds ridiculous when you put it that way. But seriously, how often do we do this in real life? How often do we know something but pretend we don't? Well, one good example is lying by omission. This is when you leave out some important detail that makes what you're saying untrue or misleading. For example, let's say your boss asks you, "Hey, how's the project coming along?" And you behind on the project, but you don't want your boss to know that you struggling. So instead of saying something like, "I'm behind on the project, but I'm working on it," or "I'm having some problems with this part of the project," you just say, "It's coming along." By leaving out the important detail that you're actually behind on the project, you are actively lying to your boss, even though you never explicitly said anything false. So in this situation, you know something, but you choose not to say it. You choose to ignore it. You pretend that you don't know something when you do know it. Or how about this scenario? Let's say you have two friends and your two friends don't get along very well. They constantly fight with each other. And one day your friend A asks you, "Hey, what did you do this weekend?" And you reply, "Oh, I hung out with B." Now, obviously, you're not lying. You did hang out with your friend B, but you leaving out the important detail that your friend A and friend B are not on good terms. In this case, you might not be lying, but you're definitely not being honest either. Now, I'm not saying that lying by omission is always a bad thing. Sometimes it can actually be good. For example, let's say you're on a date with someone and you're having a great time. You're both laughing and having fun, but then your date brings up the fact that they have some serious medical condition that makes their life pretty miserable. Would you really want to hear every gory detail of their medical condition? Probably not. And even if you did want to hear it, would it be good for you to hear it? Would it be beneficial for you to know this stuff right now? Maybe not. So, in this situation, it might be better to just change the subject and pretend that you don't want to hear these details, even though you do want to hear them. Pretending that you do want to know something when you do know, it can sometimes help you avoid unnecessary worry or anxiety. Or how about when we forget things that we know? For example, let's say you re-giving a speech in front of a group of people and you re-talking about a topic that you know a lot about. But as you start speaking, you realize that you forgot an important detail. Maybe you forgot a statistic or a fact or a story that you had planned on including in your speech. What do you do? Well, the best solution is obviously to just ignore it and pretend that you never knew it in the first place. You just keep going with your speech as if nothing happened. Of course, this assumes that forgetting this fact won't make a big difference in your speech. If it is a big deal, then you have to stop and improvise. But if it's not a big deal, then it's much better to just pretend that you never knew it in the first place. Otherwise, you'll end up making a big deal out of nothing. Bottom line is that sometimes pretending not to know something can be a good thing. Sometimes it can protect us from worry or anxiety. Other times it can save us from making a fool of ourselves. But as always, it's important to consider both sides of the argument. What are the pros and cons? What are the benefits and drawbacks? On the one hand, pretending that we don't know something when we do know it can be a good thing. It can help us avoid worry or anxiety. It can help us save face when we make a mistake. It can help us get out of awkward situations. But on the other hand, pretending that we don't know something when we do know it can also lead to deception and dishonesty. It can cause other people to lose trust in us. It can damage our reputation. It can make us feel guilty or ashamed. So what's the answer? Well, like most things in life, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. We have to decide on a case-by-case basis. We have to weigh the pros and cons and make a decision based on the situation. There is no easy answer. But hopefully this video has given you something to think about. Thanks for watching. See you next time.